Hey, Meader.
Yes, Nathan.
So, did you take the time to watch that house episode we were talking about? The tribal medicine one?
Yes.
Oh, we need to talk. So, this episode was the tribal medicine episode. It's actually pretty late in the season as far as, or the series, than what I thought.
It is the fifth to last episode ever, and it was season 8, episode 18, called Body and Soul.
Right. And it stars that cute Asian girl who has sex with Chase.
Yes, exactly.
So, to get down to our disagreement, me and Gideon, I believe, were saying that the episode was a bit wishy-washy and a bit unsolid on the message.
We made a lot of assertions there in what the episode was and wasn't about. One of the biggest disagreements was that Nate, you weren't really making an argument one way or the other. You were being wishy-washy. And then Gideon was saying, and I'm putting words in your mouth here, so eat them up. Gideon was saying that that he got the feeling that it was a everybody wins type of scenario at the end, and that they weren't taking a hard stance on it, and that it was just like it felt like they were just trying to make everybody happy in the long run. And I said that I had never gotten that feeling from any episode of House, and that I think that they were more saying that it was that there are other things in this world and they were kind of taking the bigger approach than just saying like tribal medicine's bullshit, by saying House needs to be open to more things. House isn't always the be all end all.
Well, I don't know about that, because this is where the kind of crux of the episode happened for me. House made the guess it was X disease, I'm not going to be able to say it. And the chance of it was like 1 out of a billion. Is that right, G?
Yeah.
It was 1 in a billion.
Yep.
1 in a billion. So pretty much impossible, right? And, he kind of stepped back and he's like, I don't know. He had some reason to believe it was true. And the argument that Taub made later in that episode was, well, which one, after the mother kind of said, oh, thank you for helping me, Dad, was like, Taub was like, oh, yeah, it could be one improbable cause or another improbable cause. So they kind of, Taub threw up in the air there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, if I can interject here, my problem with Taub's reasoning there is that there's just no control to it, where it's easily measurable whether the ibuprofen was working or not.
So there was a kind of a way of testing whether it was true or not.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the other doctor went in and gave him the ibuprofen, and I mean.
Also, in a way, I mean, I guess it's the same rationale as the tribal medicine in a way, but more based in kind of science. As House didn't have any reasons for it being that disease, but he had reasons for it not being that disease, or he had no reason to believe it wasn't that, because nothing excluded it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was the best fit, and the only reason that the team didn't agree was because it was a 1 in a billion chance. They thought it was Kawasaki's disease.
There was just no risk to giving the ibuprofen either. Like, there's not a lot of risk to giving someone ibuprofen who doesn't need it.
Yeah, and the metaphor there, or the analogy being drawn, is that there's also no risk in giving this kind of tribal medicine to the person.
But there was allusion to, well, hey, it could have been the tribal medicine that cured him. Who are we to know?
I'm going to take a stance against that, because I think the episode was pretty clearly against the idea that it was the tribal medicine. I mean, I think Taub was being kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit. But I do think they kind of abstract from that, to say, this is one instance where it's wrong, but, in all these other instances, who knows?
Yeah, now I agree. I think that the episode itself did definitely leave it open ended. And Taub's little tongue in cheek, I definitely think that was tongue in cheek comment that it was tribal medicine. Um, it could have been the ritual there that was technically, I guess it was an exorcism from demons. Um, it was all it's I don't know, like the whole episode itself kind of centered around dreams. And go ahead.
I was gonna say now that I'm thinking about it, it might be a little bit more of just because House's MO there, which I think you were closer to in the original pod, was that they need to learn a lesson, and what that sort of final interaction with the kid's life being saved was, you let them believe what they want, they're going to get saved anyways.
Right. And I mean, my biggest issue, and what I think I was trying to drive at was my biggest argument was that and you actually brought it up, G, was that was out of character for House. And you said, well, let's play devil's advocate here, because I had made the case House cares about his patients, and you said, if that's the case, then why would he let this happen? And I think that this was a very out of character for House, and just the placement of this episode had so much to do with everything in House's life falling apart and him just kind of giving up. And he was saying, if the mother's given up, then we should just give up. Whatever, let's just do nothing. And I mean, like the whole crux of the episode was that like his wife left him because he fucked her over, and then the patient, like, he didn't get the resolution he wanted because the mother ended up being a believer in this tribal ritual versus in medicine. And then his team went against his wishes. Adam specifically went against his wishes and did something that he ordered not to do. And then on top of all of that, House has this awful day, goes into Wilson's office, and then finds out Wilson has cancer. So that just kind of brought him to the lowest low possible. And I think that was one of the bigger reasons for them doing this episode in that way. Now, as a personal side note, I think this was an awful, awful episode, and they were just using it to drop this big bomb and make it so that like nobody will really care about the episode. All they're really going to talk about is this ending.
Yeah, I definitely got the vibe from the episode that the case was not really the focal point, and which is kind of I think rarer for House as a show as a whole, but it felt like the case and the illness was just a background, and there was a whole bunch of other things that were more interesting going on.
Yeah, I mean the whole episode was all about dreams and do dreams mean anything? Because he's analyzing Park's dream about Chase, and then Chase has the same dream about Park, and then simultaneously House is bringing up this dream that he had about his wife to Wilson, and House is saying that it did mean something, and then so he's saying that like dreams matter, and the whole episode starts with the boy having a dream, and the dream being that he's being choked, and then he has that same dream a little bit later, and then the dream manifests by actually having bruises on his neck. So really, that's what the episode was about dreams. It didn't hit the mark for me at all.
I want to bring up 2 points in regard to that. First point is that I think there was one scene in there where the grandfather starts choking the child, and it was a dream. So, of course, it was a dream, but it kind of throws the audience off a little bit because, like, oh god, this guy's literally crazy. This superstition is causing him to kill the child, and then he doesn't end up actually doing that because it's a dream. And I think the message there was that these superstitions are weird, but they wouldn't be weird to the extent where you would actually have your child killed, or you would murder your child.
It's not radicalized.
Yeah, it's not extreme in that sense. So it wouldn't be actually causing harm. Rather, it's just kind of doing nothing.
Do you think that's like the stance on the whole spirituality they're taking there? Is that, whether it's right or not is irrelevant. It doesn't cause any harm.
Well, yeah, that's why it played down to either letting them do the tribal dance, where it has a potential of doing something, but potential of doing nothing, more likely, or giving ibuprofen, which has its same potential 1 in a billion of doing nothing,
Well,
but has some potential of doing something.
It does. Well, the ibuprofen does have a tangible a probability.
Right, but the argument you'd be making is that though religion and these spiritual kind of things aren't necessarily likely, they're still somewhat improbable. They're still improbable. It might be 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion chance, but it's still there. And 1 in a billion is probably as far as we can go as far as like imagination and stuff.
Absolutely. House versus God, house versus spirituality and religion has been a theme throughout the show, through all of the seasons. But it showed itself a lot here, and it showed that one of these 1 in a billion chances is the thing that saved the kid. And House says it himself when he's laying in the bed, that he says, "I'm either religion's killing a kid or I am." That I think that's a great sum up of what the episode really came to at the end there, and what it meant to have both things on the table at the same time. Just kind of showing that there are things otherworldly that might be possible. But I can now see where you guys were coming from with the, leaves everybody feeling happy because it could have been either thing.
Well, I think I'm more of the opinion on second viewing that it's alluded that the ibuprofen was the solution.
Right. Yeah, I think we'd agree on that, and it just kind of hints that maybe there are, maybe not in this context, with this kid, the ibuprofen definitely didn't work, but maybe in some other context, something spiritual could be the key.
But what Steve brought up is interesting, and now what I'm kind of, I guess, more perplexed about in the episode is the whole dream theme. It doesn't really seem to go anywhere. It's just like, oh, things are real, things are not.
Also, just to bring this up real quick, I was going to bring this up earlier. So they're really confused about how these kind of dreams are manifesting in physical kind of markers, and they never figured that out in the show, as far as I'm aware. But it's pretty obvious, like you have a dream, and it's like, get up, Nate, get up, and then it's your mom and everything, and then you wake up and your mom is saying, hey, Nate, get up, or you have a dream and you're having some awesome sex and it feels great and everything, and then you wake up and you get this giant boner. It's physical sensations will manifest themselves into dreams.
We're talking real giant boner. Well, it is never resolved. They never address like why he had bruises on his neck.
Well, they do. House says that because Talb's kind of the heavy in this one, going against House on everything, saying, oh, well, it could be the tribal medicine. And so Talb says, well, he dreamt that he was having bruises, and then he got bruises. And House said, well, no, it's the other way around. He got bruises, and then he had a dream because he was having these bruises that were brought on by this condition. And that was one of the things that they were using to help diagnose is bruises just manifesting themselves.
Okay, I think I missed that part.
Yeah, a lot of it was just like a one line, and then they moved on. Like it felt almost rushed in some ways, but in other ways it felt slow. I don't know.
Am I dense, or where were they going with the dream theme, and how are the different themes in this episode connecting to one another?
The only thing I can think of is that it's alluding to kind of tribal medicine in itself being a kind of fantasy that you want to be true. So Park had a dream about Chase because she wanted Chase, sexually. And then Chase ended up having a dream about Park, and then, this whole dream thing kind of goes around. And it's about kind of wants and desires, or kind of unconscious kind of things. So I think they were trying to tie in the dreams of the child with that. And also maybe they're trying to tie in what House wanted, because it's very unclear what House wanted with the whole it was the Russian wife thing. Like, what did he want out of that? He was keeping there, but for how long? Like forever? Like what?
So he didn't want to take the chance that he gave her get out of jail free card, her pass, the key to her cell, and then she says, "Okay, well I'm leaving now," because then that's change, and House is all against change. The biggest thing with the dreams, and with the spirituality whole thing was there's one line when House and his wife are shooting guns, and she says that she was reading his a physics book, and she says, "How come you believe in the Higgs boson, but you can't believe in demons? You believe in dark matter, but you don't believe in otherworldly dark things." She said, "Aren't they one and the same? Isn't just because like the Higgs boson you can't see, but you know it's there, and you trust that it's there, and you can see the effects that it causes. Is that not enough to be proof to you?" And he never really directly addresses that. But that's really the theme of the whole episode, is there are things that aren't tangible that cause effects and therefore are undeniable.
Right. So in that case, the dreams are intangible. They don't exist in reality, but they have a very strong effect on the episode, especially between Park and Chase.
Well, the dreams are more. I feel like there were two different themes going on at once. One being the juxtaposition against, and while at the same time being duality between spirituality and science. And both things, the 1 in a billion chance at the end there. And then also they had the dreams thing. Do dreams mean anything? What do dreams mean? And interpreting dreams, because they have all these different ways that they interpret Park's dream and then Chase's dream. And then Park and Chase end up deciding together that it's not about being sexually attracted to each other. It's about us being comfortable with each other. And then they find comfort in together making that realization and deciding this is what the dream is about. I'm going to take charge and decide what this dream was about.
While I still don't think it was well-rounded, and the themes and ideas they were trying to get across weren't that great. But going along the line and tying in with the spirituality and what we were just saying is that sort of the theme with dreams was that, well, they don't mean anything, but they also do mean something because it's manifesting in the conversation, and then that is just talking about it is already changing your consciousness, right? So like the dream itself maybe didn't have any meaning, but now that you're reflecting on it, that by virtue gives it meaning. And the same thing with the spirituality, where it's like, well, yeah, maybe it doesn't have any meaning, but as soon as you're starting to reflect on it, you're changing your consciousness and your thought process, and in virtue of itself there, it does have a meaning.
Absolutely. Like it has the meaning you apply to it.
Well, not even just like the meaning that you apply to it, because maybe you're trying to apply a meaning to it, and in your attempt to apply meaning, it's giving it a meaning in of itself.
I think that the whole thing with Chase and Park, it's one of those, what do you call it? Like with the sitcoms, where everything's back to the same at the end, or, for next episode. So, though the dream had an impact on their behavior, all it did was reveal something they already knew, that they were comfortable with each other. And so the dream didn't do anything, essentially. It just kind of revealed nature, what they already knew to each other. And I think that's also part of the point. Also, I think I was trying to allude to what's maybe a little bit with spirituality perhaps having some positive effects. I mean, I can actually think of a few spiritual things with, like, Buddhism, which, has meditation and those kind of things, which are good. There's other spiritual things with other religions, which are good. And, there's good parts of them. So I think it was kind of, I don't think it really touched on that too much, but I think it was kind of pointing to that direction with the, the positive of the spirituality.
Albeit not directly causative.
Right. One of the biggest things that you said, Gideon, last time was that you didn't feel that the episode was done well and that it missed the mark on making its point, and they could have made the point on better episodes in better ways. You and Nate both actually said that. And after rewatching it, I completely agree. I think it was an awful episode. I didn't like it at all after rewatching it. I think it was just a throwaway episode that was only there for the punchline that changed that when it came out, put yourself in the position of that series is still going on, and then this episode comes out and Wilson has cancer. That changes the whole game. And this was probably at a time when everybody didn't know this was going to be the last season, but the writers did know, so they were just kind of using it as a punchline for being able to say, oh, well, Wilson has cancer. What's that going to mean for House? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because, especially like the themes of House and religion in previous episodes, you think that it would have been a lot more on the foreground. And yeah, House put up like a little bit of a fuss, but then like it was like a 1 minute total screen time fuss.
Yeah, like with Foreman in his office being like, you can't let him do this.
Yeah. And then, but then like he was like, you know what? Well, either they do it or I'm leaving. And like he doesn't really, House himself, who normally, will just like talk your ear off about it, doesn't really elaborate on it. It's just like, oh, it's either the religion kills her or I do, and period.
Yeah, and I still stand by the fact that it was very out of House's character. He and Talb says it himself. He says that's never stopped us before from treating people just because their parents are stupid or because they're stupid. We always do the right thing and treat them, and House was willing to give up, and that just was really out of character to me.
Yeah, and like even the cause he stated, he didn't seem really like if he was actually convicted in that cause, he would put up an argument for it, but it didn't seem like he was like no this is why we need to do it. He just like sort of like put it out there and then fizzled. He
should have overridden his team like he normally does and said no, just give him the ibuprofen and we go from there, instead of banning them from doing it, because they were thinking it was Kawasaki disease, and they said let's do a coronary bypass. And that's open heart surgery. They want to do open heart surgery on an 8-year-old. And House said, just do your thing. Don't give him the ibuprofen. Like, that's screwed up. That is not in House's character.
Yeah. House's character is usually like puts his foot down and takes over.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you guys. Here we go.
So something I found interesting was, this is I think the more dilemma with patients who are in a state of frenzy or mania, or what was the word you used when watching this, G?
Hysteria.
Hysteria. Is that the mother, she came in and she was like, no, I'm an engineer. I don't believe any of that silly stuff. And then, she starts going through this slow change where she starts being like open to it and stuff. And to me, it's clear like she's just getting desperate. She's not able to think. Because in her kind of normal state of mind, she wouldn't be thinking that at all. So to me, part of the question here is just like this moral quandary about, let's imagine you are in the desert and you're dying of thirst, and you come up to this guy and he offers you a bottle of water for $1 million, right? So obviously that's wrong, that's unethical, but the reason why it's unethical is because you have no control over yourself. This is like sleeping with someone who's drunk. There's no contract that can be made in that kind of state. In a similar way, this mother, she's in a state of frenzy, of hysteria, and I don't think she was in a place where she could actually make a decision rationally about her child.
I got to make this point, and I'm completely going back on everything I said, because for House to say, he asked his team, this is a 1 in a billion chance. Does anybody believe in this? And they all said no. So in this scenario, House is the only one that believes in this so far off chance that it's pretty much impossible. So House is in the same boat as the grandfather. He's saying that we shouldn't support this grandfather's crazy, outlandish ideas. So he's trying to not subject his team to have to follow these crazy, outlandish ideas, both of which aren't really going to do any harm. So he's actually upholding his own morals and his own sayings here of, well, if we're not going to follow this guy's 1 in a billion chance, why should we follow my 1 in a billion chance, even though neither one is. He's being non-hypocritical.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, and it's also why he talks to his team about it, because he asks them, what do you think about this? Because he's trying to see if maybe there's something reasonable there, there's something, extended, and, they also say, no, that's crazy, that's not likely at all.
Well, because usually after the fact they do it, they sort of like, again, we'll talk about like what was weird about this episode is there's sort of like this resolution with the patient at the end. But there wasn't really a resolution with the patient at the end. Like, they gave him the ibuprofen and things got better, but then the scene ended there, and they didn't really go back to the patient and talk about it anymore.
Yeah, they did. When Taub and Adams were in the room, and they said the thing about with Taub with the tongue-in-cheek thing. That was after the fact when she said, "Thanks, Dad," and then they're like, "No, it was the ibuprofen," and she's like, "You believe what you want." Taub's like, "It could be either."
Mm-hmm.
Usually when there's a resolution, and it is usually a zebra, it is usually like a crazy outlandish thing that they end up finding is the cause. But usually House runs in and handles it immediately himself. He doesn't ever consult the team. Hey, do you guys think this is the right thing? He just does it. He knows. The biggest thing here was that he wasn't sure, and his unsurety is what caused that whole thing to transpire.
By resolution, I really mean like they'd be like, all right, just keep him on the ibuprofen, and things are gonna go. They don't really talk about taking care of the patient after the fact.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the mother's like, "Oh yeah, it was the father. Thanks, Dad." But then it's like, okay, you have to keep taking ibuprofen for X, Y, and Z.
They don't say that.
Yeah, and that would kind of just deflate the whole, like, it could be either way, but.
Yeah, because like if they stop the ibuprofen, would it come right back? I mean, there's the control that I was talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that now that I've actually considered the idea that House was trying to be non-hypocritical by not forcing a 1 in a billion chance that has no negative effect on these people, I just feel he was doing it in such an egotistical way to say, well, it's because I don't want them to think that this is faith-based. I don't want her just believing just to believe. I want it to either be science or nothing.
Yeah, they just kind of put it into the, is House doing this on faith? Because it kind of is if he has any kind of, like, conviction to it.
Right. But he was doing it more on faith of his own deductive ability.
Yeah, like, and he did have things that he could relate it to. He's like, this disease, here are the symptoms, and they match up, and this is even though it's so rare, the symptoms are still matching.
And I mean, to be fair and to play devil's advocate, that's what the grandfather was thinking too. These old world things of this is what happens when a demon comes in. It's the same thing happened to his father. And I know how to get rid of them. All I need to do is do this ritual. So in a way, it was really drawing the parallel between those two characters. But we want House to be the hero because he is in every other episode, and we want to like him. But really, he's really unlikable in that episode all around. We mentioned like a bunch of times the vaccination episode that doesn't exist. I looked really hard for that, and I couldn't find anything with a vaccination episode or anything where there was a wishy-washy thing on vaccination. There was one time when vaccinations were brought up, and House painted this huge word image about little baby coffins, and like if you don't vaccinate your children, they're going to die. And they took a hard stand.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we brought that up in regard to just an example, but I don't know. I'll have to re-listen to that.
I believe it was when you were mentioning the tribal, you said the anti-vaccination or tribal medicine, and then we go into tribal medicine because that's the one I happen to remember and have examples on, which I didn't even remember it that well, clearly. But anti-vaccination, it never happens. And when it did happen and they mention it, they always took a firm stance. You need to vaccinate.
Well, man, so... Yeah, probably. I'm thinking of House as the anti-hero here again. and I mean, I was still under the impression, maybe it's my own bias, that it was the ibuprofen that worked. So House does kind of leave as the hero there.
He doesn't, though, because he told them not to do it, and he was going to give an 8-year-old open heart surgery just to prove his point. That's fucked up. You cannot stand beside him even as an anti-hero.
Yeah, but maybe House also has the insight, and I think it's happened in the past where his team has gone behind his back against him, ordering not to do something. Like, he knew, even if House said, like, he was like, I'm going home. So even if he said don't do it, part of him knew that they'd at least try.
Right. No, I think that's a very good assertion. That's a good thing to bring up there. Very possible.
Well, it's pretty interesting that we have a lot more in-depth thoughts on this episode than we initially had. I think we thought this episode was a little more. I mean, it's weird when you have these vague ideas about what the episode is, and then you watch it, and it's like, man, that's not quite what I thought it was. Mm-hmm. It was definitely more subtle than I thought it was.
The tribal stuff was a lot less invasive than I was thinking. Because really they were just like doing like papers and shaking maracas or whatever, but it wasn't anything like, oh, he needs to drink this tonic.
Yeah, it was very passive. So I mean, it's okay. You guys were wrong in this situation, but I can take your apologies in the form of kissing my ass.
Also right.
I think we could all kiss each other's ass if we ran up correctly.
Oh, we got an ass-kissing circle going on.
I just think Nate and I were the most right here in this particular case, and we should just end on that note.
I think you need to re-listen to the episode.
Yes, you re-listen to the episode, and we'll cover that next time on We Need to Talk.
We're going to do audio commentary over our own episode.
We're going to do audio commentary over our audio commentary.